You likely clicked this anticipating a familiar morning routine. Rise at 5 a.m. Endure a cold shower. Jot down thoughts in a journal. And suddenly, you're initiated into the hallowed ranks of the top 1%. I promise to reveal the routine. But be warned, it will irrevocably dismantle your current perception of reality. Society relentlessly asserts that discipline is merely about cultivating superior habits, that all you require is a greater wellspring of willpower. This, however, is a calculated falsehood, meticulously crafted to keep you perpetually exhausted. Willpower itself is a convenient myth, peddled to those who choose to remain weak. The elite, the truly formidable individuals, do not rely on fleeting motivation. Instead, they operate through a profound understanding of psychological engineering. There exists a 2.000-year-old framework, a precise sequence of psychological violence directed against the self, employed by great emperors to conquer the very essence of their own humanity. Once you comprehend the intricate architecture of this mechanism, your former self will not survive the night. Phase 1. Inoculation through degradation, the comfort trap. We commence with an uncomfortable truth you've diligently avoided. You are inherently fragile. Precisely because your existence is entirely predicated upon your comforts, you mistakenly believe that your daily ritual of premium coffee, your perfectly temperature-controlled environment, and your luxuriously soft mattress are well-deserved rewards for your arduous efforts. They are not rewards. They are, in fact, hostages, and the world, with chilling indifference, holds a pistol to their heads every single day. Scrutinize your decisions. Observe the tremor of anxiety that vibrates in your chest when your bank balance dwindles. When a vital client threatens departure, or when your business experiences a challenging month, you are gripped by terror. You find yourself negotiating from a position of profound fear. You consent to terms you utterly despise. You passively endure disrespect from your superiors, biting your tongue, paralyzed by the mere prospect of forfeiting your fundamental baseline of comfort. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in the Roman Empire, grasped the insidious nature of this biological trap. He understood implicitly that a man consumed by the fear of losing his possessions is already their slave. He didn't merely compose trite platitudes about gratitude. Instead, he meticulously engineered a potent psychological weapon against his own fear. He termed it voluntary hardship. Once a month, Seneca would cast aside his opulent robes. He would don the rough, scratchy tunic of a beggar. He would depart his sprawling estate, venture into the most impoverished district of Rome, sleep on the hard, unyielding dirt floor, and subsist solely on stale, rock-hard bread. He undertook this not for charitable reasons, nor to cultivate a performative humility. He did it to ruthlessly murder his anxiety. As he consumed that unappetizing bread, he would pose a single, piercing question to himself. Is this the condition that I so greatly feared? When you deliberately expose yourself to the worst-case scenario, on your own terms, you effectively strip the world of its leverage over you. Modern science has, at long last, begun to corroborate this ancient, brutal wisdom. Consider the 2023 meta-analyses on ego depletion, spearheaded by researchers such as Roy Baumeister. Their findings conclusively prove that willpower is not an intrinsic personality trait, it is a finite, biological reservoir of resistance. Each instance you suppress an urge, every moment you fret over a potential loss, you hemorrhage a precious drop from that cognitive battery. By the time you finally sit down to undertake the actual work, to establish your business, to meticulously research the market, to write the code, your battery is utterly depleted. You have squandered all your energy subconsciously managing your pervasive fear of poverty and discomfort. The top 1% do not bother conserving their battery. They mercilessly terminate the parasitic applications running in the background. You must embrace the practice of intentional degradation. You must meticulously engineer days where you deliberately subject yourself to the very things that terrify you. Take a week, for instance, and reduce your spending to an absolute zero. Consume only rice and beans. Sleep on the floor of your bedroom. Endure freezing cold showers. Deny yourself the dopamine hits of sugar, entertainment, and frivolous luxury. Force your brain to experience the very disaster it spends all day anxiously anticipating. When you awaken on that hard floor, shivering and hungry. You will undergo a profound psychological metamorphosis. You will realize you are still breathing. Your heart continues to beat. You did not perish. The fear simply evaporates. And when that fear dissipates, you reclaim all that previously wasted cognitive energy. You become an incredibly dangerous adversary to your competitors. For you are no longer making decisions based on self-preservation. You make decisions rooted in pure, unadulterated strategy. A man who is perfectly willing to sleep on the dirt cannot be coerced or threatened by a pay cut. A man who genuinely embraces the cold cannot be manipulated by the hollow promise of warmth. When you inoculate yourself against your own deepest fears, you strip the world of its power to negotiate with you. You set the terms, always. But conquering your fear of poverty is merely scratching the surface. What transpires when the world assails something you cannot readily replace? What occurs when your reputation, your health, or your beloved family comes under attack? How do you then remain utterly unshaken? Phase 2. The amputation of outcomes, the dead man's psychology. The vast majority of people operate under a fatal delusion. You genuinely believe you possess agency over your life. You are convinced that if you work diligently, you will undoubtedly be rewarded. You trust that if you treat others kindly, they will reciprocate with loyalty. You assume that if you meticulously study the market, your investments will inevitably multiply. This illusion of control is the precise reason for your suffering. When the market inevitably crashes, when a partner cruelly betrays you, when the algorithm mercilessly suppresses your efforts, you simply collapse. You feel profoundly betrayed by the universe itself. You spiral into a corrosive vortex of anger, depression, and incessant complaining. You need to grasp a brutal historical reality. The very foundation of Stoicism was not forged by some pampered, wealthy emperor luxuriating in a palace. It was forged by Epictetus, a man born into slavery. Epictetus was not afforded the luxury of trendy life hacks or convenient morning routines. His physical body was literally owned by another man. One day, his master, a cruel individual named Epaphroditus, seized an iron tool and began twisting Epictetus's leg, purely for his own twisted amusement. Epictetus did not scream. He did not plead for mercy. He calmly met his master's gaze and stated, with terrifying composure, "If you keep twisting, it will break." The master merely laughed and continued to twist. The bones snapped with a sickening crack. Epictetus did not shed a single tear. He simply looked at his shattered limb, then returned his gaze to his master and quietly remarked, "I told you it would break." This is not merely a tale of extraordinary pain tolerance. This is a profound narrative about the absolute, violent severing of emotional attachment to anything outside of your direct jurisdiction. This is the dichotomy of control taken to its most extreme, terrifyingly logical conclusion. Epictetus understood that his leg was not him. His leg belonged to the material world. And the material world is inherently subject to chaos, cruelty, and pure chance. If he allowed his emotional stability to be tied to the health of his leg, he would become an inevitable victim. So, he psychologically amputated his attachment to the limb even before the physical bone ever snapped. You must apply this dead man's psychology to your contemporary life. You are emotionally bleeding out because you have unwisely extended your nervous system into realms you do not and cannot own. You experience genuine psychological pain when someone hurls an insult at you on the internet because you erroneously believe you own your reputation. You do not. Your reputation is nothing more than an opinion, residing within the fickle minds of strangers. You cannot control their neural pathways. You panic when your cryptocurrency portfolio dips because you imagine you own the market. You do not. You only own the decision to either buy or sell. The top 1% operate with a ruthless, surgical divide. They draw an unyielding line around their own minds. Inside that line reside their judgments, their impulses, and their choices. Everything outside that line, the economy, the capricious behavior of their employees, the loyalty of their partners, the ultimate outcome of their projects, is treated as indifferent material. When you embark on a new business venture, you do not hope for its success. Hope is an emotion befitting a beggar. You execute the strategy flawlessly, and then you mentally kill the outcome. You treat the business as if it has already failed. If it ultimately succeeds, it is merely a pleasant surplus. an unexpected bonus. If it fails, it is simply the universe operating precisely as expected. This is the profound secret to high-stakes performance. Have you ever observed that you perform impeccably during practice sessions, yet invariably choke during the actual event? That occurs precisely because you are attached to the outcome. You are desperately attempting to control the uncontrollable. When you sever that emotional attachment to the result, the suffocating pressure vanishes entirely. You cease to be anxious. You transform into a machine, executing a protocol with chilling precision. You articulate clearly. You negotiate fiercely. You undertake colossal, calculated risks because you have already accepted the worst-case scenario as a fundamental, unshakable reality. Examine your current anxieties. Pen them down. Now, brutally categorize them. Are they truly within your absolute, direct control? If the answer is no, then you are needlessly carrying a corpse. Drop it. Stop complaining incessantly about the rain and learn, instead, to fight with savage effectiveness in the mud. When you detach your self-worth from external outcomes, you become a ghost in the machine, unpredictable, untouchable, utterly immune to intimidation. But even possessing a bulletproof mindset is rendered useless if your daily actions are erratic and inconsistent. How do you compel yourself to execute these high-level strategies when you are profoundly exhausted, relentlessly bored, or utterly devoid of motivation? Phase 3. The architecture of the inevitable, the tyranny of the microaction. Society adores the romanticized concept of motivation. You watch a slickly edited video. The music swells dramatically. The speaker passionately exhorts, and you feel an electrifying surge of energy coursing through your chest. You grandly declare that tomorrow, everything will change. You'll rise early, dominate the gym, and meticulously build your empire. Yet, 3 days later, you hit the snooze button, skip the gym, and squander 3 hours aimlessly scrolling through short-form videos. Why? Because motivation is a biological spike. It's an evolutionary surge of dopamine and adrenaline, designed for short, intense bursts of survival, such as fleeing from a predator. It was never engineered to fuel a 10-year business plan or a consistent daily study routine. Relying on motivation is akin to attempting to heat your entire house by setting off fireworks in the living room. It's loud, it's dazzlingly bright, and it leaves you shivering in the dark moments later. The elite do not concern themselves with motivation. They are fixated on inevitability. Marcus Aurelius, the esteemed emperor of Rome, did not want to wake up early. In his private diaries, he wrote extensively about his deep affection for the warmth of his bed and his profound distaste for the cold, demanding reality of his imperial duties. Yet, he rose before the sun every single day to govern an empire. He did not rely on transient hype. He employed behavioral architecture. Modern behavioral science, particularly the groundbreaking work of researchers like B.J. Fogg, precisely illuminates the mechanism that Aurelius intuitively grasped. You do not construct a habit through sheer force of will. You build it by designing a psychological cage that leaves your weaker self with absolutely no escape routes. This is the science of habit stacking, but we are going to weaponize it. The amateur attempts to conjure a new behavior out of thin air. I will read 30 pages a day. They invariably fail because the action floats disconnected in a void, unsupported by any existing structure. The strategist, however, identifies a behavior that is already neurologically hardwired, an action they perform every single day without fail. Regardless of how depressed, tired, or lazy they feel, perhaps it's drinking their morning coffee, brushing their teeth, or switching on the shower. Then, you take the new, challenging behavior and weld it irrevocably to the hardwired behavior. You do not negotiate. You make the hardwired action the immediate trigger that instantly compels the new action. But you must begin microscopically small. If you aspire to cultivate a stoic discipline of physical training, you do not commit to a 2-hour workout. Your brain will immediately perceive the massive energy cost and release friction-inducing chemicals to halt you. Instead, you commit to merely putting on your gym shoes immediately after you pour your morning coffee. That is all. Just put the shoes on. Your brain offers no resistance to this. The energy cost is virtually zero. But once those shoes are on, the psychological barrier has been breached. The physics of momentum will then effortlessly take over. You must treat your own brain like a hostile entity that constantly seeks the path of least resistance. You are the architect, and your brain is the prisoner. You must design your environment so that failing your routine requires significantly more effort than actually executing it. Sleep in your workout clothes. Place your alarm clock in the bathroom, beside a refreshing glass of water. Delete your social media applications from your phone every single night, thereby forcing you to manually re-download them the following day if you wish to waste time. You meticulously strip away all friction from the tasks you want to accomplish, and you erect colossal walls of friction around the tasks you wish to avoid. This is precisely how the Roman legions conquered the known world. They were not intrinsically braver than the barbarians. The barbarians were often larger, fiercer, and fought with a primal, untamed rage. The Romans, however, fought with terrifying, mechanical precision. They were trained so relentlessly that when the inevitable chaos of battle erupted, they did not have to think. They did not have to feel brave. Their bodies automatically formed the impenetrable shield wall. Their arms automatically thrust the gladius with deadly efficiency. They triumphed because their discipline was an inevitability. You must engineer your life so that success is no longer a matter of willpower, but a matter of physics. You meticulously stack the micro-actions. You weld them together seamlessly. You create a daily sequence that inexorably pulls you forward on a predetermined track, requiring zero motivation to execute. When you successfully remove the burdensome weight of choice from your daily routine, you conserve immense amounts of decision-making power. You become a machine in the morning, so that you may be a genius in the afternoon. But what happens when the machine malfunctions? What occurs when you inevitably falter, succumb to an impulse, or lose your composure? How do you prevent a single, isolated failure from catastrophically collapsing your entire meticulously built architecture? Phase 4. The daily assassination, the autopsy of the self. The defining characteristic of the weak is how they navigate the close of their day. The average person uses the evening hours to numb themselves. They consume heavy foods. They drink to excess. They indulge in mindless entertainment. They do everything within their power to drown out the low-level hum of anxiety and regret concerning the tasks they should have completed but ultimately neglected. They drift off to sleep, vainly hoping that tomorrow will miraculously be better. It never is. The top 1% do not hope. They audit. Seneca himself practiced a brutal evening routine. Once his wife had retired to sleep and the house was cloaked in complete darkness, he would sit alone and place himself squarely on trial. He would meticulously review his entire day, action by action, word by word, playing it back in his mind like a security camera feed. He was not merely writing a gratitude journal. He was conducting a forensic autopsy on his own character. You must adopt this practice. It is arguably the most uncomfortable, devastating habit you will ever cultivate. At the close of your day, you sit with a notebook and a pen. You do not transcribe your goals. You do not list your dreams. You write down your failures. You interrogate yourself with the cold, unyielding precision of a prosecutor mercilessly cross-examining a hostile witness. Where did I act out of fear today? Whose approval did I seek? When did I allow an external event to control my internal state? What excuse did I employ to avoid the difficult work? How did I lie to myself? Do not sugarcoat it. Do not attempt to justify your actions. If you snapped curtly at your partner because you were stressed about a client, you write down, unequivocally, I failed to control my temper because I am unable to compartmentalize financial anxiety. I acted like a child. If you skipped your deep work session to scroll aimlessly on your phone, you write down, I traded my long-term empire for short-term dopamine because my focus is weak. This is not about self-hatred. This is about supreme, unflinching accountability. You cannot rectify a flaw that you refuse to explicitly name. By compelling yourself to transcribe your weaknesses, you drag them out of the murky shadows of your subconscious and into the harsh, unforgiving light of objective reality. When you behold your excuses written out in stark black and white, they instantaneously lose their power. They cease to feel like valid reasons and begin to look precisely like what they truly are: pathetic lies. But Seneca's routine encompassed a second, equally crucial step. After he had ruthlessly dissected his failures, he performed something profoundly liberating. He forgave himself completely. He would then utter, "See that you do not do this again. Now, I forgive you." You put the weak version of yourself on trial. You meticulously extract the invaluable data from your failures. And then, you execute that version of you. You kill the man who failed today, so that he cannot possibly infect the man who awakens tomorrow. This daily assassination is the ultimate psychological reset. Most people drag the decaying corpse of yesterday's mistakes into today. They carry the crushing weight of guilt from skipping the gym, the gnawing shame of procrastination, the bitter regret of a lost temper. That guilt makes them heavy. It makes them feel like inevitable failures, which, in turn, inexorably leads to further failure. When you conduct the daily autopsy, you wipe the slate clean. You retire to sleep feeling empty, unburdened. You sleep with the profound peace of a dead man. And when you awaken, you are reborn. You carry no baggage. You possess only the cold, hard data of what not to do, and the blank canvas of a brand new day. This is the very rhythm of the outlier. You awaken and execute a ruthless, frictionless routine, meticulously anchored in micro-actions. You navigate the day with a dead man's psychology, completely detached from the capricious outcomes of your efforts. You confront chaos and profound loss by realizing you have already inoculated yourself against the direst worst-case scenario. And you conclude the day by slaughtering your ego on the unyielding altar of objective truth. This is not a mere self-help routine, it is a profound metamorphosis. When you faithfully apply these 4 phases, you will begin to perceive a terrifying shift in how the world responds to your presence. People will instinctively sense the gravitas, the sheer density of your being. They will cease attempting to manipulate you with fear, for they will realize you harbor no fear of loss. They will abandon their attempts to bait you with insults, for they will see that you have psychologically amputated your ego. They will observe your unwavering consistency and incorrectly assume you are either gifted, exceedingly lucky, or simply pathologically obsessed. They will utterly fail to comprehend that you have simply engineered a life where failure is unequivocally more difficult than success. You will step into a reality where you are no longer a mere participant in the chaotic, emotional rat race. You become the observer. You become the architect. You become the 1%. But merely understanding this framework is only the initial step. Knowledge without diligent execution is nothing more than sophisticated entertainment. You now possess the blueprint. The crucial question is, do you truly possess the stomach to actually build it? Because the very moment you commit to this path, there is no turning back. You will observe the people around you, endlessly complaining, passively hoping, perpetually reacting, and you will feel a profound, chilling distance between yourself and them. You will realize just how profoundly asleep they truly are. Are you adequately prepared for that level of isolation? Are you truly prepared for the cold, unyielding reality of absolute control? If this has truly opened your eyes, understand that this is only what I am able to reveal publicly. There are videos I simply cannot upload for general consumption. There are aspects of dark psychology that I am unequivocally unable to discuss publicly on platforms like YouTube without facing immediate censorship or demonetization. The algorithm, by its very nature, suppresses the most potent information. That hidden knowledge exists exclusively behind the join button. If you are still reading, you are demonstrably not like the others. Do subscribe if you haven't already. But if you truly desire what remains hidden, click the join button and ascend to the architect level. You will unlock exclusive, uncensored videos that delve into the deepest, most challenging parts of the human psyche. Most people won't take this step. And that, precisely, is the point.